The rhythm theory states that a to and from measured movement, an inflow and outflow, a swing backward and forward like a pendulum, all these elements are embodied in everything. There is rhythm between any pair of poles or opposites, and it is directly connected to the law of polarity. This theory allows the shift from one pole to the other, and not generally the poles of extreme opposing forces are to be seen. Everything is vibrating and shifting to those rhythms. Life cycles, seasons, development phases, and patterns constitute these rhythms. Each frequency represents the universe's consistency. The law of rhythm claims that a pendulum is similar to the energy in the universe. It tends to swing to the left if something swings to the right. All are involved in a life cycle. In the cycles of economies, this rule can also be seen. Everything follows a process in a rhythmic pattern. People feel limitless joy while just making things all perfect. The job is great when everything is on the right track. One's sales targets are attained. Children are occupied and satisfied, and everything seems fine in the world. However, the pain creeps up when things take a U-turn. Perhaps one's sales messages stop pouring. The relations go bad to worse, or something goes wrong in the rising social status. Suddenly, people are found facing challenges in life, struggling to settle scores as quickly as possible. But always fighting through is not the solution. When it feels like all the positive vibes have gone, people have two options. The first alternative is to allow the focus to remain fixed to the defined goal. People should do everything they can and push through the hard times. They must endure and concentrate on nothing except to get golden times back. Of course, things could turn around, but one should enjoy the struggle, because if one is driven by fear, there is no excitement in life. As with the onrushing sea tide, trying to defend against the flow is the worst thing one can do. When obstacles are thrown in people's direction, the second option they have is to realize that the universe is dragging energy back for a meaningful purpose. The smartest thing people can do is accept the truth and ignore the pain, knowing that all will be fine again shortly, as per the law of rhythm. The universe has many basic laws, such as the law of vibration and the law of attraction. All living creatures or non-living things are like magnets, and people are drawn to them that match their purpose. The law of rhythm is a less known but very relevant natural law. This law states that, much like the waves, the forces of the world flow in and eventually subside. It might seem contrary to the law of attraction, causing the question of why the unending human energies that are manifested would seem to be pulled back by the universe. But if the purpose is honest, it is easier to ease out where the universal force is pulling everyone. Instead of seeing the situational decline as something that is not perfect, people now see it as an alert that their body wants some relaxation. Therefore, they need to reach a higher and better level of potential according to the law of rhythm. The secret to success is learning this rule with a balance by never getting worked up or allowing unpleasant things to enter the consciousness. The universe tends to make people manifest whatever they want, make them feel happy, and make them live the life they are supposed to live. It often occurs in the phase of plenty and prosperity, and sometimes in the receding tide of hope. One should recognize the receding wave and swim with it. When people take a deep breath of completeness and let themselves get swept away, they will notice miracles are happening in their lives. How to maintain rhythm. There will always be ups and downs in life, and for every action there will be an equal and opposite reaction. The following directions will help people understand the flow of the law of rhythm and how it influences human life. Making out the thought process and mindset. It is easy to feel like life is happening either in favor or against it. People need to ask questions like how they feel and what they should do at a particular point in time. Everybody has an option, and there are still opportunities somewhere waiting within adversity. In the face of adverse swings, people should try to keep things in the right perspective and find ways to progress to a higher state of optimism. Inculcating policy of non-attachment. People should not always expect results in their favor, but work for a neutral or indifferent state of mind. Non-attachment is the secret to success. When people remove themselves from expectations signifying a severe pendulum swing, it helps them regulate their emotions. As a result, individuals are not as shocked or depressed by an event that does not go their way, even in difficult times. Step in and embrace the flow of life. Sooner or later, the tide is going to turn off as per natural laws. Happiness is not dependent on external factors that are beyond human influence. Humans are not affected by the ups and downs when they manage their emotions, mainly when things do not go their way. People tend to lean into the cycles and patterns of life against the obstacles of peaks and valleys. While preventing one's feelings from swinging to extremes, one can rise above the negative facets of the life cycle. It's about being in the middle of rhythm and enjoying the swings while retaining a sense of calm and composure. Besides, people should use the power of determination to stay optimistic as well. Indecisive thought process. The law of rhythm changes its position in human lives through ongoing cycles. With these collective patterns inside and around human beings, people can flow. They can help offset the extremes that will lead them to more meaningful growth and improve their potential. The soul advances in leaps and bounds when individuals grow their potential. While building a successful life, people prefer to know and learn to apply the law of rhythm. It helps them move forward. That is just a question of perspective as well as trust in the said process. Therefore, whenever people are in their rhythm, it is in business, innovation, interactions, or personality development, the relevant principle will reassure them that nothing is everlasting. People can't stop the movement of natural rhythm. However, they can track down the perception. Every season is essential to establish equilibrium, accompanied by a little gratitude and harmony. Has anyone felt that the law of rhythm causes the swing? The 7 prevailing universal laws may sum up the legitimate answer to this common query. There are 7 key universal rules, or concepts, that have persisted since human energy came into material reality, without exception, that people have worked within. Before people could think through words within a practiced spoken language, human knowledge and inner knowledge came from intuition, via the physical being's feeling sensations. Technically, people have been streamlined by learning a language, or removed from their actual inner being and understanding. Individuals are now reliant on input outside of themselves, and they have now overlooked their direct link to these 7 universal laws that defy thinking because of the said disconnection. It is not necessary to research or master these rules. It can simply be done by recognizing the experiences. To illustrate, people have not learned the law of gravity, but they live and function entirely inside it, never floating up in the air, since people don't understand it. To remain on the field, people get it because they live it. They don't have to justify it because it is their own experience. The swing of the pendulum related to the law of rhythm takes its own course, building upon the law of polarity elements. The law of rhythm reflects the fact that from one place to another, everything happens in a conscious movement, going in and out, moving backward and forward, rising and dropping, draining away and flowing again. Energy always flows, never really sits idle. It is never immobile and ever on the move. One can assume a pendulum, swinging uniformly in both directions. It does not swing on its own, and requires human energy to initiate it. Every thought process comprises a pole, the law of polarity, and on that pole, the swing, human emotions, of motion leads to a greater knowledge of momentum and position on the poles. Changes are not the actions, but the subjects. Nothing ever really rests in the physical world. In the long existence of being in one's physical self, an individual is never the same person for more than a couple of seconds. Human cells fragment continuously. Hair grows, food is consumed and digested, and duly disposed of. People have more experience, and they gain more knowledge, yet they find themselves within their usual self. What one observes is notable changes, or the result of thousands of small adjustments. All people do is change every other second. Thus they become a better version of themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and naturally, without thinking. It is just the human mindset that prohibits people from learning the law of rhythm. Not only does thought separate humankind from attaining wholeness, but it separates them from their physical world as well. The mastery over the 7 laws of the universe is known to mankind since the early stages when they are born. As and when the words or language have been introduced to individuals, conscious thinking isolates them from their healthy inner self. Impossible to exist without thinking. Without thought, how can one exist? This question is being repeatedly answered and will continue to be explained until people are no longer curious to question. Whenever there is a dilemma, the issues lie within the solution. The remedy never falls within the issue. Otherwise, there would be no issue at all. Human beings are the ideal recipients of thoughts. Thoughts do not occur without obtaining them from human consciousness or awareness. Therefore, before thinking, people live in wholeness before ever receiving them. People know that they are the energy that has enabled them to reach there and made them conscious as they start to realize where they are located on the pole of the subject of the thought process. The room where all this takes place is the human consciousness. There are no other thoughts required. The law of rhythm is always on the move through human consciousness. One needs to pay attention to the swing, change, within self, before thinking, and not after. Everything in the universe is temporary. The planet is revolving around the sun. The moon orbits the Earth planet. The Earth rotates every 24 hours on its axis, resulting in seasonal shifts, movement of tides, day transforms into the night, and vice versa. These realities are all rhythmic actions that have been happening for centuries. Energy is still in motion, and these movements form life cycles and patterns. One may see the impact in the stock market, political inclinations of community, and the overall human relations. Each step has a different purpose and meaningful function, but they are bound together for the complete picture. It is a better state of mind to be with only the spring season. Monotony will surely creep in. Rhythm prevails everywhere. Without getting the holistic overview, one tends to prefer summer days, bulls and bears in the stock market, or progressive politics. But as people come to know about the law of polarity, they realize that humans are part of bigger perspectives. They need the other stages just as much. One can understand the meaning of polarity as to take a few steps back and feel that the time factor dominates everything. On their own terms and deadlines, people tend to expect something in their favor. But if they just take a deep breath and practice patience, they would see that the tides still surface. The essence is to trust the mechanism. Mother Nature controls the law of rhythm. The same idea holds within all. In the external world, human feelings, mood swings, and behaviors are ever changing. When people are down, they always feel that the situation will last forever, and hope against hope is the best recourse, especially when one feels dejected. Swim with the flow of rhythm and life. Living beings do not dominate the rhythms, but if individuals can continue to go with the flow rather than oppose it, they will be much happier in the long term. People must appreciate the rhythm principles while they last, and when things are in their favor. When things are not going well, one should take comfort in believing that happier days will come. One must understand that with maturity and confidence that there is a time for every action. So learning to experience the ebb and flow of life is the essence. Rhythm belongs to the core of nature. Just like the seasons arrive and depart, the tides rise and disappear. It is well understood that any substance is simply energy at a lower level of vibration. The wave that oscillates between the peak and the valley takes the shape of these vibrations. In all fundamental natural substances, such as seasons, tides, and planetary motions, this same vibration pattern can be seen. Many scientists would acknowledge that the force of rhythm exists in the physical world, but ancient thinkers like the Hermetics took this idea a little further. As maintained by the fifth Hermetic theory, the law of rhythm says that between two poles there is swinging like a pendulum motion that appears not only on the physical, but also on the mental as well as spiritual realms. Since this is the case, human emotions, feelings, desires, and expectations often display oscillation patterns. In human life, people can verify how easily mood swings with the passage of the violent storm. The ebb and flow of nature are equally applicable to all human beings, but some rhythm specialists have neutralized the influence on their own. These people have attempted to evade the predictable flow of mental conditions into which most individuals are trapped. Universal rhythm. Hermetic educators think that the world is the potential source of mental creation. The inventive process of this potentiality is compared to an artist or creator. The presence of the Almighty, or creation of the Source, reduces its eternal vibration to abstract matters, similar to how the artists or sculptors lose themselves inside their own creations. This step includes an upswell of material called the Big Bang by scientists. The aggregate matter that now makes up the universe, however, enters an upward path through God's infinite vibration. It is an evolutionary period wherein things become more and more complicated, like atoms become components, components become chemicals, chemicals become species, species become animals, and animals eventually become human beings. In the universal expansion, awareness re-emerges, and the Source starts to recall itself when the missions are successful. Even the development of the universe obeys the concept of rhythm, as people might already have noted. Therefore, humans are positioned on one giant pendulum, swinging back into the Source, and spreads across the rest of the planet. Spiritual compensation. There is always an element of duality in physical existence where all aspects are made of almost opposite poles or conditions. There is no hate without affection, and there is no slope without a climb. Life is a blend of love as well as hatred, both of which happen simultaneously. There is a continuous oscillation that takes place at any stage of life between the two extremes. One can handle both the emergence and fall of a political movement as a suitable example. Progressive movements are ever increasing in today's modern society. The extreme representation of the right wing in the USA is opposed by resistance from extreme groups on the left wing, and the cycle repeats itself by the right responding to the response of the left. In any field of life, there is a never-ending loop of action and reaction. However, the scale of the swing to the right is equal to the measurement of the swing to the left. Nature continues to rebalance itself toward homeostasis. Nothing can be achieved without losing anything as well. The individual who is born wealthy gains material pleasures, but loses the ability to develop such character qualities given to a poor fellow. Besides, people may be born with outlooks on life that allow for low levels of pleasure and low levels of pain, while others experience the reverse order. The surface of awareness. The Hermetic thinkers had educated their subjects that human experience had two planes, low and high. Unconscious habits are said to work on the lower surface, while awareness exists on the higher plane. Further, the law of rhythm impacts the subconscious plane, so an individual must ascend the higher surface to avoid the pendulum's rhythmic swing that manifests on the unconscious layer. Neutralizing the pendulum swing. People effectively allow the cycles of unconscious actions to move beneath them by raising the level of consciousness. The negative swing of the mind pendulum is neutralized by this phase, such that it does not manifest within consciousness on its own. The Hermetic teachings, mainstream psychology, and innovative spiritual practices such as mindfulness meditation emphasize here. The educated youth can rise well above repetitive mood and behavioral cycles, but they can also polarize their attitudes toward the positive pole. With a proper and clinical perception of mental states and their accompanying vibrations, the youth may lift their mind's vibrations to higher consciousness levels and escape the rhythms inside, where most people are trapped. By first becoming mindful of human thought cycles, Hermeticism helps one to practice the art of cognitive transmutation, and then consciously steer the mind toward the preferred level of being through consciousness. Doing so will give an individual access to higher levels of existence, which will be a far more productive way to create truth than to remain in the physical world alone. People should get introduced to a fascinating law in the universe called the Law of Rhythm. It means that life's movements are both clinical and cyclical. Human lives will have ups, and they will face downs as well. People should understand and predict that when things look gloomy, they must get better to understand this powerful law of rhythm. If people need some assurance that things won't always be as they are now, this law will allow them to expect the situation to improve. If people face ups and downs in life, then good times will probably turn into bad times. The law of rhythm teaches that each change has to occur, but it doesn't mean that change has to always be worse than ever. One can observe the tide in the sea. The tide swirls up and falls down. For those who love the sight of the high tide of the ocean, the rhythm is very soothing. One can also think of a roller coaster. For those who ride it, the swinging motions of ups and downs are fascinating and thrilling. Also, one should remember that in a baby swing, the swing's rocking motion is so stimulating to the baby that it calms her down and makes her drift off to sleep. The rhythm does not really have to include the gloomy times in the law of rhythm as maintained. What it may consist of is that fun days will become better moments. The lowest rhythm points could be wonderful memories, and the higher ones may be the high points. Maybe the good days were once the happiest memories, but people got so used to it over time that they thought it was time to step forward anyway. They have wanted to go to a higher rhythm level. The previous times are still great when people step up the rhythm's tempo, but they tend to fall lower than the present good times that are relatively better. What is it that draws people toward rhythm? An infant likes being rocked or cradled in a warm embrace that swings back and forth. Kids run on the playground for the swings and slides. The seasons are shifting, the temperatures are fluctuating, and the moon phases are coming and going. Nature loves transition, and so as human beings. Human beings have an inherent urge for change. They manage to make a shift when things become too stagnant. And yet they agree that if the change is abrupt or not to their preference, they like it the way it was before. From the law of rhythm, what can one learn? It is foreseeable. One should learn from the law when people have tough times, and they should believe that happy moments lie ahead. It is a systemic process, or cycle. When people are in the middle of frustrations, some of the frustrating moments seem so irreversible. The sore throat appears as heavy during the party night, and yet it was gone. The fever that had held the entire family up with the baby all night finally subsides. The first argument shatters even the happiness of the newly married couple, and when a young man comes to town, the teenage couple breaks up due to his larger-than-life presence. By the law of polarity, people know that contrast is the key. Instead of being stuck there, remembering the law of rhythm makes people recognize the downward trends. The more people learn to observe, the easier it is to navigate the surroundings and get the most out of them. Actually, over time, people could get used to the feeling they had when they felt strong. They would like to have another rising experience when things become normal, to feel that thrilling surge upward again. That feeling of success motivates people to move forward. One can build on those good memories and feel those positive emotions by concentrating on what they aspire. It can become something of a staircase to climb, then a sea wave to sail. Perhaps one of the universal rules that a great many people would skip is the law of rhythm. The said law observes that everything is rhythmic, just like the seashore tides come in and go out. There are rhythms. Bad days are followed by good moments. Day follows night, and swings down are accompanied by swings up. It is a simple law to grasp, but the majority do not support it. But if people really strip it down to its simplest terms, they can see that they didn't have those rhythms in their lives. Accordingly, they wouldn't understand the future optimism and the roller coaster stuff. If people do not experience bad days, the real purpose of positive and happy days wouldn't even surface in their minds, as they would all treat this taken for granted. Again, they would not know the true portrayal of daytime and accept it in its entirety if they did not see the inevitable darkness. One would take a great deal for granted without these rhythmic changes and forget to admire the positive things, moments, and activities in human lives. So whether or not people like this law of rhythm, it always exists to help everyone, and all are bound by this rule without any discrimination. Even the world's richest, happiest, and strongest individuals have their highs and lows. What can people do with the downtimes while waiting for the climb? The need is to keep confident and focused on the goal. The good days are around the corner, as it happened earlier. So one should not give up. Everyone here has a few stints of bad days, but it's those bad moments and occasions that really make everyone admire the good days when they arrive. All human beings have ups and downs as they pass through the life cycle. People's good days, as well as bad days, are unavoidable. Wins and defeats are part and parcel of human life. This is what the law of rhythm is all about. People also observe these fluctuations in nature, as the sea has both high and low tides. In the morning, the sun comes up, and in the evening, it drops. Inside people, they have excellent memories, and often they have difficult times that torment them mentally, emotionally, and physically. It is much easier to handle this ever-changing life cycle while doing their best. These basics are better explained by using some of the other principles. People often witness the law of polarity as they look at the rhythms of right and wrong. They are just positive or negative in the way they apply the law of rhythm to their life. The principle of eternal transmutation comes into play as things go through phases of transition. The law of vibration exists at the core of the human mindset, both pros and cons. Therefore, people also knowing that an upswing is approaching while they are on a downswing. Students should be coached to pass through the bad times at public speaking to the point where they are trying to deliver a persuasive speech and face little or no fear without feeling shy getting up in front of a large audience. Yet they have to grasp the law of rhythm and observe it themselves to do this. When they deliver a low speech, They realize that a positive speech is on the way. It helps them to support others because they understand this rule. The law of rhythm refers to the time, sequence, pattern, or trend wherein something is manifested. It can easily be confused with other natural laws, such as the gender gestation law, the law of vibration, law of polarity, or even the law of eternal transmutation. So how, apart from the others, is the law of rhythm critical? Or more specifically, how does it interact with other laws to help people draw a similarity? What goes up must fall back, and what goes down must resurface. But in daily tasks, how does it qualify? To support the statement, one may quote the old saying of when one door shuts, another door unlocks. The law of polarity explains that there is a conflict in all respects, so it is clear to see this law connects with the law of rhythm. However, the law of rhythm ensures that when things are not in favor, the right times will, once again, be on the way by making another door open for people. Besides, the law of gestation states that there are plenty of ideas to adopt. Human thoughts, plans, relations, etc. have evolved and developed during this period. Basically, the law of rhythm is an interpretation of habits. A habit is something that you practice daily because it carries a rhythmic movement. The law of rhythm shows the patterns of nature and the world at large. Nature, for instance, is in the process of running from season to season, which is both nature's rhythm as well as habits. Habits are articulated within rhythms. Even if they are helpful, they restrict people to the rhythm of the pendulum's swing within that habit's parameters. Even if there are advantages, people seek to go beyond those constraints, and are also interested in enhancing their capacity for even greater achievements. In the musical context, the melody is also rhythm, by adding rhythmic senses. One may find that a song always plays around in musicians' minds to create the power that melody has to shape their habits, and one cannot stop it. It reveals how people can get in and cannot come out of the habit of a melody. The risk is that when they use music to perform any spiritual or personal practice, it can become an automated, mechanical process and destroy any potential it has for one's spiritual growth. People also benefit from where they learn to work, and not against the normal rhythm. In the physical universe, this is especially true. People spend time enjoying surfing on the beach, not working intentionally to stop it. After a period of practice, using the law of rhythm consciously with physical being will allow people to accept the moment of rest. The desired results would not be brought about by moving on. People can become both mentally and emotionally conscious of the law of rhythm. Instead of being terrified by the wave's flow, one can simply soften the swing of their own pendulum by remaining alert. People can consider when they experience tension, and they can link to a smaller cycle of waves, the breath wave. An illustration of actually moving the pendulum further than it wanted to go was the experience of intense energetic contraction after the expansion of the healing segment. Until people realized that contraction was healthy, one could remain above any presumed negative emotions and reduce both its strength and duration. People should avoid the wave and use it to their advantage. One should consider the present storm of fear created by the economic shift. The present scenario is part of a large chain in a cycle that culminated at least 5,000 years ago in the reverse way. It is because no one has a point of reference in their real or subjective memory to understand what's going on if the wave seems disturbed and frightening. All people need to do is relax, take a deep breath, remain pacified, stay focused, and enjoy the life journey. All goes well when people experience good feelings and feel contented and comfortable. It is a rolling time, or one can call it having exceptional luck. Human lives are in equilibrium. The embodiments of that rule are superior to the individual willpower or mental condition. The rhythm persists, but on the lower subconscious stage as the negativity takes place. Through the willpower to remain positive, people try to resolve or transmute it to a greater level. They rise above the normal rhythm, and the negativity is kept far inside. Life shifts and is continually updating itself in stages. It is first from the highs, and then from the lows, then from inside, and then from outside. The process of renewal is always on the trot. The pulse and heartbeat of life itself are what form these rhythmic movements. The rhythms of the universe have a sequence of regeneration. Depending on how people choose to react to these rhythms, these instructions can be either destructive or friendly. The natural motions of inhaling and exhaling are the concepts that underlie this regulation. When people get tired of the law of rhythm experiences, then the human soul is open to finding new ways to regulate particular behavioral patterns. The process is now starting, which will reduce the intense depression that is taking over their lives. When people initiate this state of mind and demonstrate that individuals are prepared to obtain feedback on another decent way of experiencing life, then the law of rhythm is applied. There are also rhythms in the mental and spiritual realms. It can be noted in mood changes and mental states of imbalance. These are some of the most stressful moments because vital energy is drained out. Now one can love life and have so much happiness, but then he also has to feel low, since the pendulum swings to the right and then returns to the left. The reversal is always there to have. If one has a real desire to become successful, one needs patience and discipline before anything happens. In the beginning, when the world checks the individual ability to succeed, the pendulum will regularly swing. The swing will decrease in intensity every time people stand firm and remain optimistic. It will make one successful. The longer people commit, the more successful they can become with the swing of the pendulum. Each swing of the pendulum takes people closer to where they want to be, and they better understand the circumstances. The rule of rhythm cannot be prevented. However, people can understand and work with it to get what they want in life. The law of rhythm explains how the stream of energy from the sun touches the earth and its core, and again takes the reverse course by the interaction and eventually returns to the sun. One must think about the force in the universe like a pendulum to learn more about the theory and its functions. A pendulum swings to the right, but is never constant. It swings around to the left in a little while. It continues this back and forth motion forever. All are involved in a dancing pattern in human life, such as flowing, swaying, and swinging. It starts from birth and ends at death. The Kabbalion describes the law as everything is flowing in and out. Everything has its tidal impact. Everything rises and falls. The pendulum swing is manifested everywhere, and the proportionate measure of the swing to the right is equivalent to the proportionate measure of the swing to the left. All are rightly compensated. There are moments when activities seem to be out of rhythm, and it makes one feel awkward. Instead of regretting it, people's job is to remain focused on their vision and follow the flow. To get a better understanding of the preset objectives, they must deal professionally with these seasonal variances. It is all that makes the difference in how one reacts to these rhythms. People can choose to embrace them and enjoy the situation because of what they are, or face them. They have their options. People should just note that if the struggle is extended, they will add more miseries into their lives. If people successfully ride the tide of transition, a new dimension of hope will soon rise before them. 4 acts are said to be regulating the law of rhythm: right or wrong rhythm in emotions, right or wrong rhythm in thought, right or wrong rhythm in voice, and right or wrong rhythm in behavior. Not only hate or anger, but even love or affection, which is not rhythmically sustained, will collapse. Not just an evil thought, but even a decent thought without regard to rhythm will prove to be fatal. It is not just fake assurances, but even real and sensitive speech that has no rhythm will prove deadly. It will prove to be out of place, not just bad action, but also if they know that they are at the top, then they can expect that their health and fitness will drop any time in the future. Experts see the process to rise above adverse sections of a life cycle. One should not allow his feelings to swing too far, to the right or the left.